Hello friends, welcome to binaryupdates.com. And if you are a person who have a question where and how to learn microcontroller programming, and this video maybe is for you. And you might be encountered with the situations that you can see in this picture. There is a guy sitting right in front of different microcontroller chips, and he want to learn a microcontroller, or he want to make use of microcontroller for his next project, but he is not able to figure it out how to learn microcontroller programming and how to get started. As we all know that there are different microcontroller architecture available into the market. There are some examples like we have AVR, we have a PIC from Microchip, and then we have ARM microcontrollers. So there are different variants that we have in microcontrollers like 8-bit and 32-bit. So for the beginners, it's a big question where and how to get started. So let me give you a couple of tips which will help you to solve your question. So the tip number one is to choose any 8-bit microcontroller. I say here 8-bit microcontroller because you can even choose 32-bit microcontroller but for the beginner it's great to start with 8-bit microcontroller because it has a great amount of resources, free resources, web tutorials available for that, and they are pretty explanatory, and architecture itself is a little bit easy to understand at the beginner point of view. So you can choose any 8-bit microcontroller, and when you are a little bit confident about 8-bit architecture, you can move on to 32-bit microcontrollers. So you have a couple of choices that you can make between 8-bit microcontrollers. Either you can choose 8051 microcontroller series, or you can use AVR. AVR is something that I preferred all the time because it has the extensive tutorials available on a web, and there are a lot of user community support is there from AVR. So I choose to stay with AVR, but it's all up to you what you want to choose. You also have to choose PIC microcontroller from Microchip. It all depends on you what you feel comfortable with. Okay, so the first step is to choose any 8-bit microcontroller. Now the second step is make sure availability of free tutorials on web, because when we are student and when we are a beginner, then we don't have enough money to spend to buy expensive books or to go for expensive classes or training program which cost a lot, and unfortunately student doesn't afford. Like me, when I was in the universities, I was not afforded these things to do. So I recommend you to make sure the online free resources. And for example, especially for 8-bit AVR, I will suggest you some of the websites. The first one is my own website, that is binaryupdates.com. Then there is another website, newbiehack.com, maxembedded.com, avrfreg.net, and many more. So you can take a reference of this site and make your learning right smooth in the world of microcontroller programming. Now the next step is to choose a right compiler and programmer. So what is compiler and what is programmer? So compiler basically is a programming environment. It's a programming environment that we call compiler, and programmer is a piece of hardware adapter which used to transfer your machine code, I mean the hex file, into the microcontroller. So it's basically program your code into the microchip. So when you start learning as a beginner, you have to make sure that you choose a right compiler and right programming adapter. There are a couple of things you have to make sure before you choose and start experiment with your compiler and programmer. The first point is to make sure that the good documentation available in terms of user manual, because when you are new, you always have to take a reference of user manual when you write your software for your microchip. The second thing is you have to make sure that your programming environment, that is your compiler and your hardware programming adapter, is easily configurable in the beginner point of view, because you don't have to spend a lot of time to configure your software and hardware instead of focusing on programming. So I recommend you to make sure that you choose the right programming environment and hardware adapter. Then the next point is to make sure the compatibility with your operating system, because in today's world we have a lot of different operating systems from Windows, Linux, and Mac. And in Linux itself, we have different distributions of operating systems. So if you are a kind of person who make a lot of experiments with your computer, with your system, and try a different operating system, then you have to make sure that your programming environment and your hardware programming adapter is compatible with your operating system. And the next thing you have to take care, which is very important in terms of embedded developers, you have to make sure that your programming environment, I mean compiler, or maybe your programming adapter, hardware adapter, has a great simulation and debugging capability. This is the one thing that you have to do over and over again, and you have to have the expertise to become a good embedded developer. So you have to make sure this couple of things. And the next tip I want to give you, if you are hobbyist, and if you are hobbyist or student, and if you're very new and you don't want to get into the startup hustles, then I would recommend you to use Arduino Uno hardware adapter. So this is a little interesting board that's been designed by Arduino Incorporation. It's a company in Italy. I don't know how to pronounce this name, but I think I'm right, Arduino. And you can use this kit, which is very easy to use and has a lot of tons of different example tutorial available on Google, on YouTube, and it will be very easy to get started with this. Just Google with its name and tutorial, Arduino Uno tutorials or something like that, and you would get tons of things to get started. And the next step is very important as in electronics and embedded developer point of view. Buy your own components. Just go to a retail shop and buy your own components, preferably buy DIP chip, and you may use some kind of breadboard circuit, and put your microchip into the breadboard and try to build small little projects. And if you don't really have a time to work around electronics, then you can even choose something like this, what I have shown you here. It's a beautiful kit designed by Tinker Sky Electronics, and they made a hardware programming adapter for AVR chip. This is just an example I take in terms of AVR, but you can have a lot of different products available into market that you can make use of. So it's very important to buy your own components, your own adapters, and learning by doing is the best approach to learn microcontroller programming. So I recommend you to go with that and buy components and do by your own. The next step is next thing that you have to do is you have to be always stay motivated. And I recommend you don't be afraid to take chances and make experiment with your circuits, with your microcontroller chip, to write different interfaces and make experiments to check the things, how things work. I mean to understand how electronics work. So this is very important because you will be finding in trouble working on the problems and errors for several hours or several days. So in that case you have to be don't just give up when you are beginner, because you have to embedded system or a microcontroller programming needs to have a steepest learning curve. It's not it's not a learning process that you can achieve it for one day or 1 month or something. It has a very steepest curve. You need a time and patience to learn, and you always need motivations to learn. So couple of things you need to take care when you start your experimenting with a microcontroller chip. You have to take care of input voltage. If you exceed input voltage, then the power rating of your chip, then you will find your chip will burn out and you will find in troublesome situations. The next thing you have to take care is don't alter your power pins, because if you alter your VCC and a ground, it will lead the spark and you will again find your chip will be burned and your circuit will be short. And I just want to recommend you to keep multimeter with you and keep tracking your voltage and keep making sure that your power pins, which one is VCC and which one is ground, and make them in a proper make connections in a proper way. The next step is to take a necessary steps for your safety, because safety comes first. So make sure for your safety precautions. And the next thing I have to say that have a fun and enjoy with a microcontroller. It's very interesting field. It's a physical computing where you can try to write a software, where you can write a software at one hand, and other hand you can see the output, and you can even interact with microcontrollers via software. So it's a great field. Have a fun with it, enjoy your time, and see you in the next video and tutorial. So I hope you find this video educational and entertaining. If you really like this video, then please consider to subscribe. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye bye.